Hello, Gen Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast.
All patrons get early access to new CutOff Jeans episodes before they're released to the public.
And along with our undying gratitude, you'll also be able to join our special patron-only Facebook group.
But the most exciting new perk is exclusive access to essays I'm writing from my upcoming memoir. And you guys can help me be editors.
New Patreon supporters will also get a shout-out on the podcast.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Jeans podcast and would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
Thank you all so much, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of this podcast. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Richard.
You're looking well.
Oh, thanks.
I haven't seen you in person in so long, but
So very long.
But you were made for the camera.
Well, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that. What's up? Did your show go back into...
Yes, we had a 2-week hiatus while the cast recovered from COVID. I think about 3/4 of the cast came down with it by the end, including understudies. It just went through like wildfire. But everybody was vaxxed and boosted, and so they are back on their feet and they're back on stage, and everybody seems to be doing great. So I'm really relieved for them and for the show. Actually, not just my show, but there were 3 shows running, and all 3 of them had to shut down.
And they all had to shut down.
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
Well, I just had my annual glamping trip that I do with my friends and kids.
Glamping.
And glamping, yes. And well, it was a bust, man. Half of us came down the day before came down with COVID.
Oh, no.
I was not one of them. Mm-hmm. And so there was half as many of us there, which kind of put a damper on the whole thing, just because those are some really strong personalities in our group.
Sure. Whenever you have plans.
Not that there's anything wrong with who did go, but it was not as fun as it usually. And, I'm having some mental health issues right now.
Oh, no.
Just regarding life that I kind of need to take a little bit better care of myself.
That's something we could all do, take better care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I need to really unplug from reading certain posts and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, because it gets really ugly, and even though I don't engage in it, I don't ever respond to it, because I feel like nobody's ever changed anybody's mind on social media by posting something after somebody says something horrible. I don't engage, but it still does its damage, and so I try when I don't always succeed, but I try to stay away from it when I'm feeling vulnerable or upset. Yeah,
the hardest thing for me as an advocate for adoption reform is that we as a group, specifically on TikTok, get attacked so much from the adoption community, the adoption industry, the multi-billion-dollar adoption industry. Mm-hmm. Because, adults who have been adopted speaking out about their trauma is not good for their business.
Right, sure.
So the pushback is often devastating, and you really need to step away from it sometimes just for your own mental health.
Right.
And that's kind of where I am.
Well, then why don't we talk about what's going on in DNA?
Let's do that. It seems like people listen more, or people become more aware when celebrities have something to say about something.
Oh, yeah, for always, and no matter what it's about, right?
Isn't that interesting? Right. So it was recently uncovered that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson discovered he has 5 new half-siblings from DNA tests.
Wow.
Yeah, after 50 years, the actor has discovered that he has 5 half-siblings that he never knew about. Shocker. According to reports from Sports Illustrated, The Rock has 2 sisters and 3 brothers. DNA testing revealed that Lisa Purvis, Paula Parsons, Trevor Edwards, Adrian Bowles, and Aaron Fowler are also the children of his late father, Rocky Johnson.
Wow.
Yeah, Lisa Purvis is currently working on a film that documents the small reunion shared between her and most of the newfound siblings at an Airbnb in Toronto in 2018. When asked about their brother, the siblings had this to say: "Dwayne doesn't owe us anything." I'm sure that's a relief. Lisa said, "We just want to be recognized," which is really all people want.
Right.
That want answers is recognition of their existence. She said, "We sat on the back burner forever. Rocky was our dad just as well as Dwayne's." Dwayne Johnson has described his relationship with his father as incredibly complicated. That must be an understatement. And has detailed some portions of his life with his father and mother on his NBC television series, Young Rock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's not something that I watch just because the wrestling aesthetic is not something that appeals to me.
No, but you know, I will say he's a good performer.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely got something.
Yeah, no, he's got
Certainly.
charisma. And I remember when he was on Saturday Night Live as a host once, and he was really funny. Like he could do that sketch comedy. And then I'll just put a little plug in. I went to the preview of, I'm going to try to get it correct, the title correct, DC League of Super Pets.
Oh, yes. Oh, right. And what's that about?
It's about Superman's dog and a bunch of pets trying to save humanity and get adopted also.
Superman had a dog?
It's named Crypto. And
sure, yeah.
The only reason I know this is because John worked on that film, and so we went to the premiere in Warner Brothers last week, and it was really, really good. Like I was shocked because I'm not a big superhero fan, and it was so much fun. It was hysterically funny.
Oh, that's great.
And, anyway, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the voice of Crypto, the Superman's dog.
Of course he is.
And he did a great job.
Yeah. No, he has a great sense of timing, and he's charming.
Yes. So
Yes.
Little did we know while I was watching that I would find out later this week that he has these half siblings.
Well, and obviously he's known since 2018. So,
Okay.
Let's go to this. CeCe Moore posted a story written about a case that she just solved, which is interesting because she had to take a brand new investigative approach for it. A lot of the cases that we get are, DNA is amazing for solving cases, but if there just aren't a lot of matches or close matches, it becomes very, very difficult.
Sure.
And sometimes we have to wait for closer matches. Mm-hmm. So let me read this for you. A suspect was arrested this week in a young woman's 1975 murder after CeCe Moore, who called the cold case extremely difficult to solve, turned to a brand new investigative approach. Lindy Sue Beekler, 19, was stabbed to death at her Manor Township, Pennsylvania apartment on December 5th, 1975, according to the Lancaster County District Attorney's Office. She suffered 19 stab wounds to her neck, chest, back, and abdomen. Decades went by without an arrest in the gruesome crime. When DNA analysis emerged in the 1990s, prosecutors said that investigators submitted DNA from semen left on Beekler's underwear to CODIS and CODIS, the National Law Enforcement DNA Database.
Oh, good, because I was going to ask.
Yes, that's the database that is regularly used, but there's only going to be DNA of people who have been convicted of crimes.
I see.
In there. So if they haven't been convicted of other crimes, their DNA is not going to be in there.
Right.
And that's where we get a wall a lot of the time.
No first timers, no first crimers in there.
Exactly. And because the Golden State Killer, for example, had never been arrested for anything, even though he committed multiple crimes, that's why his DNA was not in POTUS.
Okay.
So in 2020, CeCe Moore, a former ABC News contributor and the chief genetic genealogist of Parabon Nanolabs, began investigating the case with genetic genealogy, which uses an unknown suspect's DNA to trace his or her family. And as you know, they did find DNA on her. As Moore began working on Buechler's case, she was extremely disappointed when she uploaded the case file to a DNA database and could only find a very, very distant relatives of the unknown suspect. Now, remember that she can't upload this DNA into Ancestry and 23andMe.
No.
Because they will not accept law enforcement DNA files.
I see.
So she can only go with, I think, FTDNA, which they have to pay a fee for, and also, obviously, GEDmatch, which, speaking from my personal experience, GEDmatch is not helpful has not been helpful so far in any of my cases. Mm-hmm. She said, usually I'm able to identify common ancestors, but because the common ancestors between the matches and the suspect in this case were probably back in the 1700s or 1600s, I wasn't able to approach it the way that I do most cases. It was really tugging at me, so I decided to develop a new approach. There was a clear migration pattern from a town in southern Italy called Gasparina to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is where the crime occurred. She said she scoured Lancaster documents for months and landed on a local club of residents who were from Italy. Those membership cards listed when people were born. Because I knew that the suspect had roots in this small town, Gasparina, I went through all of those cards and found the people who had immigrated from Gasparina to Lancaster.
Wow, sounds like it was the last Gasparina of hope.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Kudos, my friend.
Thank you.
I
was waiting for the right moment for that.
I knew you were. She said she learned about 2,300 Italians lived in Lancaster at the time of the crime, which for her was a manageable number. Go CeCe. About half are going to be female. A certain percentage are going to be too young or too old. I knew that this person had to be fully Italian from Gasparina or close by. I worked through each and every one of those families that had migrated from that very specific town. It was really only possible because of this very unique membership card record collection that Lancaster had.
Huh.
Yeah, very unique. Moore said she compared those membership cards with Ellis Island records and World War I and II draft registration cards to identify the men who moved from Gasparina to Lancaster and then worked to identify their descendants.
Huh.
I just quietly worked on it in my own time. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't even know if it would work. Amazing. After looking at all Italian families in Lancaster in 1975, Moore said she zeroed in on 68-year-old David Cinepoli. All of his grandparents were from Gasparina, Moore said, and he had previously lived in Buechler's apartment complex.
Aha.
In February 2022, investigators surveilled Cinepoli and recovered a coffee cup he used and threw away at the Philadelphia International Airport, prosecutors said. Labs later confirmed the DNA on Cinepoli's coffee cup matched the DNA from the semen on Buechler's underwear, according to the prosecutors.
Wow.
Investigators also found that DNA in blood left on Buechler's pantyhose were determined to be consistent with the semen from Buechler's underwear.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. David
Cinepoli, 68, of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, has been charged in the 1975 homicide of 19-year-old Lindy Sue Buechler. He has lived in Lancaster since the murder, was arrested at his home on Sunday on a charge of criminal homicide, prosecutors announced Monday. His preliminary hearing is set for July 25th. No defense attorney has been listed.
So he was only 30 years old or something at the time, probably. You said it was 1975.
It was 75, yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Cinepoli was not on our radar, Lancaster County District Attorney Heather Adams said at a news conference. He was never cleared, Adams said, but none of the tips over the years had suggested him as a possible suspect. Buechler's murder marked the first time Moore used this new approach, and she said she's since used it successfully in 2 more cases. I have attempted to do this many times. And maybe it's because CeCe, other than the fact that she's brilliant, but she has access to way more than I do.
Yeah, and that whole That whole Gasparini thing and those cards, about saying that they were from there is
I mean, that is really specific, and it's amazing that she found the time to go through that with all that she has on her plate.
Right. But it worked.
Get it.
It worked.
It worked.
Can you imagine now? So this guy killed somebody, when he was like 30 years old. And, maybe for a while, maybe next couple of years, maybe was sweating it. Like, are they going to find out it was me? And then, he probably felt at this point in his life, it was so long ago that he was scot-free. And look at what happens.
I mean, I wonder how many people who have apparently gotten away with murder are aware of what is out there now and are really
shaking in their boots.
Or are they changing? Are they changing their identity? Are they moving? Are they clearing their history?
That's fascinating, and good for CeCe for
I know,
solving a case, especially for this woman's family.
Yeah. Also, while we're speaking about CeCe, I saw something online about an upcoming 60 Minutes episode. 60 Minutes Australia has an upcoming episode. I think it's going to be this weekend. And we can usually view that once it's aired in Australia on YouTube. Just FYI.
Oh.
Because there a lot of the times they have stuff about things happening here sooner than we do, which is interesting. But there's I looked at this teaser that they have posted about an upcoming story about the JonBenet Ramsey case, and apparently John Ramsey is now insisting that the DNA be used, that they move on to using genetic genealogy, which I don't understand why it hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, me neither, right? I remember that case. It's got to be now, 20 years? More than 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's 20. It's right on 20 years, I think.
And God, everyone in that family was a suspect at one point. The mother, I think she's gone now. And,
she died.
Even the brother, and he was young. He was a kid, right? So but they never found out what happened. So maybe we'll live long enough to find out. Maybe,
yeah. I'm certainly interested to find out.
Well, thank you, CeCe, for all that
Thanks,
inside
CeCe.
information. And let's take a break.
All right.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review, or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
Okay, we're back.
Hello.
Hey, in our last episode, I started reconstructing our Book Nook segment.
Yes.
And I got about halfway through it, and we're constantly adding to it, by the way, because let me see, Tammy Sakowski Reeves did mentioned or added a link to a book that she's reading called Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys, Sepetys. And it's historical fiction related to the Franco babies that we talked about in the last episode.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we can add that to our list. And let me see, we left off with The Gathering Place by Emma Stevens last time because she, of course, we're in the middle of her epic Odyssey.
Yes, which is very interesting, yeah.
Yes. So let me see. I discovered a genealogical crime mystery author called Nathan Dylan Goodwin. And I've been in contact with him, and he's going to be on the show. But he has several genealogical series. He has a forensic genealogical series. I started with one called The Foundlings. There's a cold case series as well as historical nonfiction series. And they're very interesting, and they're a great way for people who are learning about genetic genealogy because he just kind of breaks everything down in, even though it's fiction, but or part of it is fiction, but part of it is based on fact and probably cases he's solved.
Yeah.
But Nathan Dylan Goodwin is his way if you want to Google him.
Cool.
All right, so we have The Baby Thief, which is about lovely Georgia Tann, which is the true story of the woman who sold over 5,000 abused, neglected, and stolen babies in the 1950s by Barbara Bizantz Raymond. And there's, of course, Before We Were Yours, which is based on George's Hand by Lisa Wingate. This weekend on my glamping trip, a friend of mine was reading that. And she said, I started thinking of you when I was reading this. And I looked and I was like, oh, of course, the baby thief. Of course you thought of me. Why wouldn't you?
Not because you're a baby thief.
Not because, for entirely different reasons. Okay, we also have American Baby by Gabrielle Glasser, friend of the show, who has been on our epic Odyssey, which is a great read, very important for all adoptees and people outside of the adoption constellation, just to understand, because what we need is understanding. Also Inheritance by Danny Shapiro, another friend of the show. One of the first books I read was called The Mistress's Daughter by A.M. Holmes. And it's just a biography about her situation. Identical Strangers by Elise Shine and Paula Bernstein. Now, these are twins who are separated by the Louise Wise Agency, just like Three Identical Strangers, the movie Three Identical Strangers. Mm-hmm. So the Louise Wise Agency had a secret project going where they were separating multiples without telling anybody and sending them to different families and then studying them to see how they would turn out.
This reminds me of The Boys from Brazil. Have we talked about this?
No.
Oh, so The Boys from Brazil is an old novel fiction by Ira Levin, who also wrote Rosemary's Baby. And there was a movie of the novel in the 70s, late 70s, with Gregory Peck and Laurence Olivier. And basically it was about somebody had cloned Hitler, right? And they made like 9 babies, and they were trying to recreate Hitler's upbringing so that these babies would all grow up to be just like him, and they would, because Hitler's father died when he was, young. These assassins, these Nazi assassins, were going all over the world to where these babies were living, or these children were living, and killing their fathers.
Why do I not know this?
Oh, it's a really good movie. I mean, I haven't seen it in years, but
I always thought it was like some kind of Prison Break thing.
No. Maybe it's not the best title in terms of like telling you what it's about, but yeah. And I think Dr. Mengele, right? Who was
sure.
It was the doctor who cloned Hitler so that these children could grow up and take over the world.
Whoa. Okay, that's on my Netflix queue now.
It's a great movie. It's a great book. I've read the book as well. And you know who's in it? A really young Steve Guttenberg at the very beginning of the movie.
Really?
Yes, like before he was a star,
Yeah.
Because the stars were Gregory Peck, who plays the villain, who plays Joseph Mengele, and and Laurence Olivier, who I believe plays... Oh God! One of the famous Nazi hunters, the Jewish Nazi. Nazi hunters. I cannot.
Schindler.
Yeah, not him. No,
okay.
I can't remember. But he plays like a real life person. But
sure.
It's all fiction. But it's a really good.
Wow.
And what you just told me in that book Nook thing just brought it all back clearly. So
that's very timely. Yeah. I can't believe I didn't know that was what. Well, that was about.
I don't remember that they talked a lot about DNA, but there was a section of the film where they showed like how it was done, cloning. Like they somehow got some cells from Hitler.
But I mean, they didn't have that technology. So what do you think they did? What do you think they tried to do, thinking that they knew what they were doing?
Right. And it makes me wonder if they couldn't do a remake of that film.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's using the DNA part.
That is actually a good thought, because we know so much more about DNA now.
True. And the whole thing about, is it nature or nurture, right? Because they're saying, was he predisposed to be like this monster? Or
I can answer that. It's nature. Okay, sorry.
No, but what I mean is they were trying to recreate his same home life that he had.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, guess Guess what I'm watching tonight? All right. Moving on. Okay. Hidden Identity, a memoir. Lynn Grubb, who she also has a podcast, I guess, of this book on Podbean, but I think it is her reading the book. But she is somebody that I've spoken to on and off, and I'd like to have her as a future guest on the podcast because I think she's very interesting. But her book is Hidden Identity, a memoir. I'll probably get to it. By the way, I still haven't finished The Gathering Place yet because of my triggeredness that I've had in the last couple of weeks. And there are times when I'm like, I just don't have it in me right now. Right. I need to, Can
I throw something out there?
Please.
And maybe, I'm sure that most of our listeners agree, is that, Julie, you should write a book.
It's the triggeredness that's stopping me.
Yeah.
And in fact, you'll hear in today's conversation, in the second part of the interview with Emma, I kind of am asking her process a little bit about how she got there.
You've already written all these blogs, right? So you've kind of already put it down. I'm not saying, just publish the blog. I just mean, I think you have a really interesting story to tell. I think the fact that you are a performer and you have that knowledge as well, that's another aspect that's very entertaining. You've got the stories of that mixed with the stories of your epic Odyssey. And your personality. I just feel like, I don't know. I'm sure everybody agrees, but there's something there.
I intend on it. I get kind of blocked whenever I try to start writing it. What I have been doing, and I've been putting them on the Patreon page, as I've been writing little chapters, not even chapters, but just little, little slices of life of things that I think about that I think could certainly be a part of a greater work. But certainly, and Emma mentioned that the process for her was like making a skeleton of a timeline and a skeleton of events and of her life, and then going back and filling it in. Like, I think she mentioned something about putting up the Christmas tree and then decorating it,
that's a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, it is. You'll hear that, actually.
That's funny. Even when I'm writing a play or a musical, it's the same. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm making everything up, it's not from my own life. I do start with this outline, like what is this about? Where is it going? What are like the tentpole things I want to have happen, and then filling in what happens in between,
Yeah, I think I'm also stuck in a place where I don't know the other stuff that happened. My adoption trauma very much plays into my story, but because I had such a recent trauma surrounding my adoption trauma, I think that's what's throwing me off.
Sure, but that's also part of the story, though. You know what I mean?
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah, I guess I just kind of have to hold my nose and write through it.
Yeah, it's a really good way. And you know what else? You need a good editor. And I bet every one of the authors that you've had on the program would say that, because
that's exactly what Emma said.
Because you're too close to it, right?
Yep. Yeah. The last one on this list is Finding Purpose in the Pain, One Adoptee's Journey from Heartbreak to Healing. This is by Pamela Karen Nova, who is the founder of Adoptees Connect, and is very much somebody that I plan on talking to in the future, because she has such great insight about her journey and about her continuing journey. And Adoptees Connect is such a great place for adoptees to connect.
Good book Nook suggestions, Julie, and a future book Nook when I'll interview you about your book.
Yay! Okay, and guys, feel free to contribute to the list.
We'll see you after the break.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Jeans with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cut Off Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
It is time for part 2 of Emma Stevens, author and adoptee, Epic Odyssey. This is where we get into the DNA speak in her particular story.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it. Let's listen in.
But it also connects a lot of dots for me.
Me too.
And understanding that that was my primal wound.
Yep.
And until I meet it and understand it, that's the only way I can start managing it.
That's a good way of putting it. Is your biological mother still living?
No, she passed right about the same time as my adoptive brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there was 2 deaths in the pandemic.
Oh.
I think hers was related to being COVID, but my brother's definitely wasn't. His was lifelong addiction and then codependency with his own addicted son that had his own addiction. And they were just kind of sick together. And his heart just exploded and said, sorry, we can't go on.
Really?
Yeah, it was sad. I dedicated the book to him.
Okay, so circling back. So you basically went no contact with her after a couple years?
Yeah, that was true. And I was really busy with 2 babies. So it just didn't really, I didn't feel like it was serving a purpose for her or for me. And I think she appreciated that, to tell you the truth. I don't think she knew what to do with me when I was there. It's like, uh-oh, do I have to be responsible and try to be her mother, or what am I? It's all those thought of expectations that we have about people.
Did she have any other kids?
Yes, she had one before me. She had one after me that she kept. And then she had another one after him that she gave away to a neighbor that was their next door neighbor.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yep.
She just kind of gave away to the neighbor.
She did. They officially adopted this baby, but she kept him for about a year. So when the neighbor said, I'd like to adopt both your children, and she said, no, I want to keep this one because he takes good care of me, but you can have this younger one. And so they adopted my third half brother.
And are you in touch with him?
Here and about, he's in Europe, so I don't get to hear from him often.
Okay.
But I think we're aware of each other. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I have one paternal half brother that we've met. We're aware of each other, but not on the same page as far as understanding adoption.
Yeah.
They're the ones that got kept, and I'm the one that got sent away. I even have the one brother from the birth mom that says, well, how lucky you were adopted. Why didn't you adopt me out, Mom?
Mm-hmm. I was told that too by cousins that they were like, oh, we thought you had such a great life, so much better life than us. So can we talk a little bit about the paternal side?
Oh, yeah, that gets exciting again. Later, fast forward 35 years later, and my daughter is 24.
Okay, we have the same story. It's freaking me out. Okay, go ahead.
Really?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, so here I am, the sleuth of the 80s. I guess you too also.
Yes, super sleuth.
But I never thought of doing DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And so my daughter says, Mom, I just did my DNA, and there's some relatives popping up. You may want to take a look at this. And I'm like stopping dead in my tracks going, what? And I immediately look at her list of closest biological relatives. And of course, I don't know at that point if they're connected to me or connected to her father.
Right.
So I immediately send for a test, and that takes 3 weeks or so.
What year was this, just out of curiosity?
Oh, this was only about right before the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
About 3 years ago. Okay, so like I said, I'd done all this preliminary sleuthing on Facebook and stalking people on Instagram and seeing if I could find any commonalities of people having conversations with each other, of, identifying them as, hey, cousin, or Mom, we had a wonderful birthday. So I had all these guesstimates.
Yep.
But I couldn't know for sure until Mother's Day, just like you had a Mother's Day. I had one where I got my results on Mother's Day morning, and bam, they were my relatives. Oh. So there was a cousin, what do you call it, once removed?
First cousin once removed?
Yes, first cousin once removed.
So there were like around 300 to 400 centimorgans. Does that sound right? Yeah, I don't expect you to remember that. That's crazy. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm so dialed into the centimorgans. I just assume everybody has it memorized. Go ahead.
And so she happened to be the one person that I saw so many commonalities with. Uh-huh. She knew this person and that person, and then what really led me to believe I was on the right track is I found the surname that I knew was my birth father's last name because he was on my birth certificate.
Oh, he was?
Yes.
Okay.
Birth mother put her fictitious name, but she offered up the real name of the birth father.
Oh, that was on purpose. That was a direct shot fired right there.
But of course, I didn't know at that point if she'd made that name up either.
Yeah.
But then when I saw that last name and there was connection to all these different people, so that was the first thing I did is I reached out to this first cousin that had so many relationships with all of the above. Mm-hmm. And she confirmed it right in a second. She was thrilled. She was so happy when I told her the story. And she was confirming that, yes, we sure did have that name in our family.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he had died 2 years prior. But I did, if you want a little back history, I did get to meet him back 35 years ago because I did find when I had his name on my birth certificate, I researched him and found him through motor vehicle records.
Okay.
And just looked for a phone number in the same city. And I was lucky. He still lived in the same city and got his phone number, called him, said, I'm coming by to see you. And he welcomed me, but he said, I'm not your father. And he said, I just helped out a friend and put my name on your birth certificate.
Oh, my God.
So we talked for like an hour. And that same boyfriend that helped me on the heist was with me on that trip, too, to meet my bio dad.
The heist.
Yeah, the heist.
I love that.
And this person, the man who was my biological father, was so interested. And I thought, wow, he is really being accommodating. And even at the end of our meeting, he hugged me and wished me well and was, saying, I'm so proud of you and blah, blah, blah. And at that point, I'm like, I think you're my bio dad, but you say you're not. So, okay.
And
but
of
I
course,
didn't
at
get
that time, you can't say, hey, look, can we just take a DNA test just to be sure?
Yeah, I didn't even know about that yet.
Right.
That wasn't even on the radar.
That's amazing that you met him.
Yeah, and little did he know that I was going to find out for sure 35 years later that I hugged my bio dad.
Yes.
And he knew it. He freaking knew it. Right. They had a relationship, so it wasn't a one-night stand.
Oh, okay.
He was Catholic and had a huge Catholic family. So when she discovered she was pregnant, then that ended the relationship between them.
Gotcha.
And so he knew he was the father.
Oh, wow. How old were they at the time?
He was 12 years older than she. Oh. She was 24 and he was, I think, 32 or 35. I don't know.
12 years would be.
Yeah, 12 years.
30,
yeah, there you go.
Whatever.
Do the math.
So they had a relationship.
They had a relationship.
Okay. And he had other kids?
Not then. I was his first. He got married later and then had one son who is my half-brother.
Gotcha.
And half-brother had a hard time with meeting me because here again, he had an awful relationship with his father. Mm. And he just couldn't believe that he'd been duped by, he'd had a half-sister all this time.
And nobody told him. So
and no one, so he didn't know. I think to this day, he doesn't know how to absorb it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does.
Huh. Isn't it interesting how our biological parents don't see the connection between us and our biological siblings? They don't see that they're not only withholding from you, but they're withholding from them.
There's such a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And even on into cousins. And I have so many cousins because I had so many aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
Now, none of the aunts and uncles are alive anymore,
right.
But they all each had about 6 or 7 kids.
Wow.
I got to meet a lot of them, about 3 years ago, and that was fabulous. They were very welcoming, and they listened to my story on the edge of their seats, couldn't believe the whole story.
Yeah. Now, are you a genealogist? Have you done your family tree at all?
No, just a little bit on Ancestry where, they help you out and say, you may want to look into this lead. Right. And so I've gotten all the way back to like 1450.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was, I think, on the maternal side.
Okay.
Yeah, it was maternal.
Okay.
But I have no way of knowing if that was even accurate. I just took their suggestions.
That's where the DNA comes in, though.
Well, they were doing educated guesses based on birth or records and
right.
Yeah.
Now, is your DNA connected to your tree?
Okay, you're probably asking me something I don't know now.
Okay, we'll talk about
probably,
that. We'll talk about that off air because I can.
Okay,
maybe I
can
help
cool.
you. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So when did you decide? Let's talk about the book again.
Okay.
When did you decide to write it? When did you start writing it? How long did it take you? Because because I want to do the same thing, obviously. So I am fishing for information.
Yeah. So many people ask me this question.
Yep.
And all I can say is how I did it. And I'd have to go back to dealing with my domineering parents back in the day, early days, where the only way I could communicate with my mom and dad was by writing them a letter. And so I'd go in my room and try to express myself, put my feelings into words, and slip it under their door to where, because anytime we'd have a lecture or they would be yelling at me, I would just cry.
Right.
And so in order to have a conversation with them, I learned how to write. And I would say that I've been honing in on that skill all my life.
So that was how you learned to express yourself.
Yes.
Wow.
And then music is quite important, has always had a theme in my life too. Mm-hmm. And when I would sing, I would just hear, I could relate to the emotion that I heard in a song. And it really helped me identify how I was feeling and put language to all of that.
That just gave me chills once again. Yeah, I'm a singer as well. I was a professional singer most of my life.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a somatic experiencing thing, right?
Yeah.
It's your body expelling that energy that's been stored up.
And that's why I miss it so much, because that was I would get endorphins from singing.
Definitely.
And just, being able to express myself through breath and sound and word. Oh God, I've got to start singing again. Okay. I feel like we're the same person.
When you get to the part of the book where I talk about singing and what it did for me, let's have another conversation because I really kind of get into the euphoric thing of when, the tension between you holding a note and your breath and having a pure sound and just that crafting of it. The push and pull of that. So we'll have to talk again.
The way you're explaining it and describing it is talking to me. I noticed also in your book, and as far as I've gotten, you've already talked about, is it EMDR?
Yes.
So that's something I've been thinking of exploring.
Yeah, I believe it's really gaining a lot of speed, especially among adoptees, because we have so many implicit memories, meaning our early pre-verbal memories, that if we don't get in touch with those, they're driving our bus, and our conditioning is making our lives something that we're not really crafting. It's happening involuntarily. So EMDR is a way to connect your old memories with your new memories. And if you feel like you've been believing erroneous things, I call it a broken story, then you get a chance to rewrite it and write your new story. And that's about, we hear about the changing your pathways, neurologically, changing those networks to, you have choice. We have choice of what we believe now. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have that in our childhood, but we have that now. So I have the key to set my own self free, and so does everyone else. But you have to find that. So that's how it helped me write the book, is because I had my diary. I knew my facts of what happened, my timeline, and I had to weave it through. EMDR is a lot like meditation, and where it suspends your ability to think outside the box and experience things in a different way. And I just weaved the story around that idea. So it was kind of like I had the Christmas tree, but then I put the decorations around it. And it came out in a way that I think that is relatable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been writing this all my life.
Of course.
And once I was ready, once everything fell into place, plus the pandemic fell in place to my benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it all came flooding, just flowing through. But let me say, I had a lot of help. I had a writing coach. Mm-hmm. I had an excellent editor. I had an excellent studio production manager that helped me do the the Audible version. Mm-hmm. And I had formatting that was through Amazon, and I did self-publish because I was too impatient to do anything else.
I hear you. And
I used a pseudonym to where I didn't have to wait for my family to pass before I could have a voice.
Yeah.
And I stand firm by that. I think I absolutely did the right thing.
I think you did the right thing too. Tell me a little bit about what you, other than your book, do you do any activism?
Well, I think about 6 years ago, I really started understanding that we do have a large adoptee community. Mm-hmm. And I've been moving more and more into a role of, I want to be an advocate, not only for myself, but for other adoptees and for us all to have a voice. And I feel that I'm getting closer to, I'm looking intentionally to become involved in issues. For example, Lorraine and I brought Reckoning with the Primal Wound here to the documentary to Tulsa.
Right, a couple weeks ago.
And so we had the first movie screen showing, and that was sort of our first collaboration together. And we just are looking for opportunities to do more and more of that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I really feel like I found my purpose.
Yep.
Yeah, it just feels like the right next step for me. Like my whole life has been just kind of pointed towards what I'm starting to move into right now and expanding into that.
Yeah.
And it feels courageous, but yet, and scary, but
necessary.
But necessary. And like, I can't deny it any longer.
Yes.
And I can't stay silent any longer.
Exactly. God, again, we're the same person. Okay. Tell us again about the book and where people can get it. Okay.
It is on Amazon. It's on Kindle, and you could also get it on Audible. And it's called The Gathering Place, an Adoptee Story. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Emma Stevens, The Gathering Place, and then on Twitter and TikTok would be at Emma Stevens TGP.
Emma Stevens, thank you so much for talking to me today and for sharing your story. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and how much I'm loving your books so far.
Let's talk again when you get through to the end, because there are more similarities that I did not bring up. But you talked about, but you're going to go, oh boy, we do need to talk. Thank you for your platform. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you for yours. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Emma Stevens, thank you so much. It's such a great, this book is amazing. And I know once I finish it, because as I said earlier, I still haven't, but I know that we have so much in common.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So thanks, Emma.
Thank you, Emma. I am Richard Castle, and when I am not co-hosting and producing this podcast, I am a musician, a playwright, musical theater writer. You can go to my website, richardcastle.com, or you can follow me on the Twitter or on Instagram, or I think SoundCloud. Yes, SoundCloud, at Castle Songs.
Nice. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, former actress, singer, current podcaster, genetic genealogist, future author.
That's
How about
right.
that? You can find me at cutoffjeans.com, and you can get all things Cutoff Jeans and all things me. If you would like to hire me to help you with your case, that is how you can do it. You know how to find me anywhere. I'm also on all of the socials.
You know what might be a good title for that book that you are yet to write?
I do know.
What is it?
The truth is in your jeans.